Are you someone who has a side gig and is looking for tax protected ways to grow your wealth? Well, keep listening to find out about one of the best investment accounts you can utilize. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittne Helford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Hey, Lisha, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I loved most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians and other medical professionals. Discounts on disability insurance can range from 10 to 40% depending on your situation. And there is now an A+ rated carrier offering up to $10 million of life insurance without lapse. If you are very healthy with limited to no medical issues, approval is likely in 5 minutes. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs at www.pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018. Lisha, oh my goodness. I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while. So let the people know what is going on in your life.
So I got a couple things going on. One, my sister-in-law is getting ready to give birth. She is just about full term. And I went over to her house and my brother's house, obviously, yesterday, played with my niece. My parents were over there and we were sort of getting our game plan ready. It's like, all right, you could go into labor any minute now. What's going to be our plan? Who's going to watch my niece? What's going to happen at the hospital? Do we have our bags packed? Lisha, what should be in the hospital bag? So it's fun times over here in the Taylor household.
Wait, so how many nieces and nephews do you have?
I know, right? It went from 0 to 100 literally very quickly. Currently, I have 2 nephews and a niece, and
Okay.
I am getting ready for my 3rd nephew. Yes, it will be 3 boys and 1 girl.
Ah, man, she's going to be the princess. Well, it's really nice that your brother has a girl first. I've heard that in Japanese culture, correct me if I'm wrong, they say that when you have a girl first, it is a true blessing from God because they help you to take care of that baby. They're kind of like a second mother. Now, I don't know what the age gap is between your niece and her new brother, but Brooke, let me tell you, she has saved KJ from dying more than 100 times. I'm a good mom, but man, these boys, they something else. So I hope that's your brother's experience as well.
You know what? He often says that he is so grateful that he had a daughter first. He loves that little girl, plays with her all the time. She has his exact personality. If you think I'm extroverted, oh, my brother is like on 10. And that little girl is certainly so. Running around the house, you cannot just chill around her, okay? Talking all the time. But he is like in love with that little girl, and he is so grateful that he had a girl first. So I think he would share your sentiments. That being said, he is excited to finally get his boy. He just can't stop talking about it, has all these plans. And so I'm really excited for him and my sister-in-law. And now the family has taken bets on when we think she's going to deliver. And I think I'm going to win the bet. I think I'm going to win, but we'll see.
Well, I know there's something with mamas and their boys. So I'm sure that your brother will feel kind of that void. I don't know. I guess there's some boys who really, really love their dads. And of course, KJ really loves my husband, but he is a mama's boy. Some point it shifts. I think it says between the age of 0 to 6, like boys really rely on their mothers, and then it shifts and they start to look towards their fathers and want to be like them and mimic them and do everything that they're doing. So it's nice to have that balance, and I'm glad that they will be able to have that balance.
Yes, yes, I am super excited about that. As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income. because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
All right. Well, Lisha, you have crafted out this tremendous episode where I'm about to learn a lot about solo 401ks and mega backdoor Roth IRAs. And I can honestly say that, we have our own solo 401ks, but I did not think about some of the considerations before establishing the account. So we are all about to learn something today. So let's open up this conversation to talk about a solo 401k. What is it? Why do we need it? What are some of the benefits, drawbacks, and what is this thing called a mega backdoor Roth?
Yeah, let's just start from the beginning. So, a solo 401k is a type of retirement account. Specifically speaking, it's a retirement account for people who are self employed. So, if you are a physician and you do locums, if you work for yourself, if you've established your own business, then you might want to set up a retirement account. And you have lots of different choices of different kinds of retirement accounts to set up. But one of the more popular ones, and one of the ones that is oftentimes used for physicians, is a solo 401k. So, that's kind of where we stand. So if you are employed somewhere, maybe your job has a 401k or 403b available. If you are self-employed, then you can set up your own retirement account, and you have different examples, a simple IRA, a SEP IRA, but oftentimes physicians will open up a solo 401k. So that's sort of what that is. And I think one of the interesting things about a solo 401k is that when a lot of people think about these things, if they think about them at all, they're thinking, oh, I have to have my own business. Oh, I have to be a contractor. But what you may not realize is that you can set up a solo 401k even if you have a side gig. So if you're someone like me and you are employed at your main job, you may have access to a retirement account at that job, and that's great. But if you also make money on the side, then you can open up a solo 401k as well. So basically, you can have two retirement accounts.
Well, I love that you have painted this opportunity that exists for many people, because a lot of the impediment or the barriers to taking action to increase savings and to implement a lot of these financial strategies is one, a lack of knowledge, but also this concern of, do I actually qualify? And so we've normalized it. If you are locums, if you have a side gig, if you're making any money outside of your W-2 employer, then this is an option for you. So we want you to open up your ears if you tuned out for a bit, because this is one of the ways that you can increase your savings rate and do it in a tax protected manner. How exactly does it work? Before we open up this episode, you're like, oh, I actually want to talk about this component before we actually go into other things that we're going to talk about in the future, because you want to make sure you structure the solo 401k properly. So if someone is like, okay, I have some side income and I want to consider opening up this account to save more money for retirement, what would be the next steps?
Yeah. So the next step is to really ask yourself, how fancy do you want to get? How fancy do you want to get? And what do I mean by that? How much money do you want to be able to put into retirement accounts? I have some friends that are like, Lisha, I don't need all the bells and whistles. I just want the basic account. Help me set it up. And for those people, including one of my best friends that I spoke to a couple days ago, she's like, Lisha, I don't need all that. Just like help me set up the basics, and then I can run from it from there, and I can add those bells and whistles later. And I'm like, all right, cool. I got you. I'm gonna help you set this up. I have other friends that are like, Lisha, I'm trying to build wealth just like you. I want to have all the features that you have. And the reason why I'm asking how fancy do you want to get is because one of the really cool things about a solo 401k that you do not have access to if you use one of those other plans like a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, one of the cool features about a solo 401k is you can actually set it up to be able to stuff a lot of money into these accounts. And so if you set up a basic plan, you can contribute one amount, so to speak. If you set up one of the really cool fancy plans, you can set it up where you can put a ton of money into the account. And so for me, when I was setting this up, I, of course, am a finance nerd. So I'm thinking, all right, I want all the bells and whistles. I want to be able to set this thing up so I can stuff as much money as possible into these accounts. So there's kind of two options, the basic option, if you will, and then sort of a fancy option. And so if you want the basic option, you go through one set of steps. If you want the fancy option, then you go through a second set of steps. And I think before I describe the steps to go into, it might be helpful to understand what the differences are, right? Because that might sway your decision. So when it comes to a solo 401k, right? This is a retirement account that you're setting up yourself because you've got some side income or maybe because you do contractor work. You have to kind of understand how the contributions normally work, right? What is the basic plan, if you will? And when it comes to this solo 401k, you've got two kinds of contributions you can make into the plan. You've got an employee contribution and you've got an employer contribution. You're like, huh? I don't get it. Well, when you're self employed or when you make money on the side, when you earn money from a side gig, you are both the employee of that business and the employer of that business, right? Even if you didn't set up an LLC, even if you don't have an EIN number, even if you didn't make it quote unquote official, when you make money on the side, you are both the employee and the employer. And what does that mean? That means you can make employee contributions and you can make employer contributions. And when it comes to the IRS, for the most part, everybody gets one employee contribution. So no matter how many jobs you have, if you are a physician like me and you are employed at a big hospital or something like that, maybe you make your employee contribution through your job's 401k or through your job's 403b. You get one employee contribution and you can choose how you want to make that contribution. Maybe you make the full contribution at your main job. Maybe you make the full contribution at your side gig for the solo 401k that you're setting up, but you get one employee contribution. When it comes to the employer contribution, there's a bunch of different ones that can happen. For a lot of us who are employed at a main job, maybe you get something called a match. You put in money, your job matches and gives you some free money, right? So your employer is making that contribution. Well, when you have a solo 401k, because you are both the employee and the employer, you can also make an employer contribution. And so I don't want this to get too confusing, but for the basics, we're talking about, all right, for each kind of retirement account, there's an employee and an employer contribution. When you're at your job that you're employed with, you make an employee contribution and your employer makes an employer contribution, usually in the form of a match. If you make money on the side, if you only get one employee contribution, so if you've already done that employee contribution at your main job, you don't get another one, but you can make an employer contribution. And so I just want to kind of start off there because I think that part gets confusing. They're like, Lisha, I don't understand. And so you have two different contributions. And when you have a side gig, you can start making that employer contribution into your side gig solo 401k.
Yes, that's so good because when I think about 2025 numbers, the 401k, 403b employee contribution limits are 23,500 if you're under the age of 50. Plus, if you're over the age of 50, then you can stuff like I think 7,500 more in this account. So a lot of us feel limited by that, but we have extra money and we want to use this extra money as a potential tax deduction. I'm all about tax deductions. So this is another opportunity in which you have to say, okay, that's how much I can put as an employee, but the employer contribution is so much more than that. Now, when you're thinking about your employer contribution limit, Lisha, I know that is based on a certain number of factors. So can you tell us how, if we were thinking about making a contribution as an employer, what types of business accounting and numbers do we have to keep in mind?
Yeah, so everybody gets one employee contribution. So a lot of us will max that out through our main job. But when you set up the solo 401k for your side gig income, even though you can't make another employee contribution, you can make an employer contribution. And so it seems like what you're asking me, Brittne, is how much of that contribution can I make? How do I figure out how much I can contribute to that account? It usually works out to be around 20% of the profit that you make from your business. So if you're bringing in side income, got to say, okay, what's the revenue? What's the amount of money I'm bringing in? Let me subtract out any business expenses that I have. And what's left over is my profit. And I can put around 20% of my profit into a solo 401k as an employer contribution. So let's use some numbers. Let's say my side gig brings in $30,000. The research shows that the average side gig for physicians brings in around $30,000. So let's say you're bringing in $30,000. Maybe you work some extra shifts. Maybe you do some locums. Maybe you get paid to speak. Maybe you do some coaching. Maybe you're selling products, whatever it is. But let's say you bring in $30,000. Let's also say that you have about $10,000 of business expenses. Maybe you are subtracting your home office. Maybe you had to buy some equipment. Maybe you subtracted out your board certification fees or whatever it is. So you bring in $30,000. You have about $10,000 of business expenses. What's left over is $20,000 profit. So then you can take 20% of that $20,000, which is $4,000, somewhere around those lines. I hate doing math on the spot.
You good, girl. You got it. You got it.
So then you can put around $4,000 into a solo 401k as an employer contribution. And you may be thinking, all right, Lisha, $4,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money. This kind of seems like a lot to go through. And I think it's really important to keep in mind, why are we going through this effort? In this example, you're able to put around $4,000 into this account. Why is that important? One of the things to keep in mind is that when it comes to high income earners, if you're somebody like us who makes a good amount of money each year, for a lot of us, our tax bill is pretty high. It's tax season. A lot of us are thinking about how much money we have to pay in taxes, and we're constantly trying to think, how can I lower my taxes? And if you've ever asked yourself that question or looked up the answer to that question, one of the first answers that you will see is people say, start contributing to your work retirement accounts, because any money that you contribute to work retirement accounts helps to reduce your tax bill when you make those contributions as a pre-tax contribution. And so the money that you put into this account, you don't have to pay taxes on. And so if you're putting $4,000 into this account and you're in the 30% tax bracket, then you've just saved yourself a little over $1,000 in taxes. You've been able to put $4,000 into an investment account that's going to grow over time, help build your wealth. Plus, you've decreased your expenses by over $1,000. So it's sort of a win-win, because you're thinking about, how can I grow wealth? How can I decrease my taxes? Being able to stuff even more money into tax protected work retirement accounts is going to help you do that. And so these accounts are really good. So when you're thinking about, hey, I've got some side gig income, I want to be able to utilize that to grow wealth and decrease taxes, setting up a solo 401k can be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there are so many different ways to do this, and I don't want to introduce too much complexity. I also just want to say that this is something that you should talk about with your accountant, just making sure that accounting is appropriate. Because if you have a few other plans, like I've mentioned in the past, we have a cash balance plan. The cash balance plan, if it's connected to the solo 401k, if it's a profit sharing, then that will reduce it down from 20% to 6%. All of that to say, not to make this too complex, but if your situation is a little bit more complex, you might want to seek out some guidance from your accountant so that you make sure that you're putting in the appropriate amount. But as Lisha talked about, if you only have a solo 401k with your employer W-2 401k, then it's 20% profit sharing. And honestly, Lisha, $4,000 that I could give my future self, or 3,000, 1,000, whatever it is that I have control over, that I can choose the investments, that is a win-win. So I think sometimes we conceptualize that these are small amounts, but we forget about these small amounts, these habits that will build over time, and what that end goal is, because this is leading to our financial freedom. Whatever the dollar amount is, I think is worthwhile us going through this exercise, putting the money away in a tax protected fashion, and being our own boss and just really controlling the investment. So thank you so much for that. All right. So now we've talked about how it works. Where do you have your 401k? Do you have it with Fidelity, or sorry if I'm being a little nosy here?
So I set up a fancy solo 401k, and it is housed at Fidelity. But I want to make a distinction really quickly. Two common questions that I get is, Lisha, why do you have a fancy one? Lisha, my accountant says I should just do a SEP IRA or a simple IRA.
Mm,
Why are you setting up a solo 401k? And these are questions that I get all the time. In a prior episode, we talked about the backdoor Roth IRA and how if you couldn't get in through the front door, you go in through the back door. And doing so allows high income earners to be able to put money into a Roth IRA. When you make under a certain amount of money, you can go directly. You just call Fidelity, you set up your Roth IRA, you put the money in there, and you invest the money. When you start making a good amount of money, when you start making, I think the income limit is around $160,000 for those of us who are single, somewhere around there. You can't just put money directly into a Roth IRA. You have to go to the back door. And going through the back door is putting money in a traditional IRA first, and then converting it or just moving the money into a Roth IRA. So you have to go through that extra step, which I know sounds unnecessary, to be able to put money into a backdoor Roth IRA. But in order to do that, the IRS rules state that you cannot have money in a simple IRA or a SEP IRA or any sort of IRA. And so if you are somebody who makes side gig income and your accountant's like, set up a simple IRA, set up a SEP IRA, you have to tell that person, hey, hold on 1 second. I plan to do the backdoor Roth IRA. And in order for me to do that, I cannot have money in these other accounts. And so you cannot set up this SEP IRA or simple IRA for your side gig income, because if you do so, you will not be able to do the backdoor Roth IRA method. In my mind, I'm thinking, all right, I am a high income earner. I'm trying to lower my tax bill and build my wealth. How can I do that? Number one, contribute the maximum to my work retirement accounts. I've got a 403B at my job because I work for a nonprofit. Maybe other people have a 401k because they work for a for-profit institution. Regardless, step one, contribute the maximum I can to that account and get the match at my employer. Check. Step two, I probably need some money in Roth account so that when I retire, I can pull money out tax free. How do I get money into a Roth IRA? Well, I make too much money to contribute directly. So let me do this backdoor Roth IRA method so I can have some Roth money in retirement. How do I do that? Set up my traditional IRA, put the money in there first, move it to a Roth IRA, and then I've done that, right? $7,000 each year. Check. What else can I do to lower my tax bill and build my wealth? Oh, Brittne and Lisha were talking about a solo 401k for my side gig income. My accountant is saying, why not a SEP IRA or simple IRA? Again, remind your accountant, hey, I'm doing this backdoor Roth IRA method, so I can't open up a SEP IRA or a simple IRA. Because if I do so, I'm going to get prorated on my backdoor Roth IRA contribution. A way to get around that, if you've got side gig income, you're a high income earner, and you still want to be able to do the backdoor Roth IRA, is to set up a solo 401k. So if that sounded confusing to you, you got lost somewhere in the middle, just understand that the reason we're not doing a SEP IRA or simple IRA is because we're going to do a solo 401k. So that's one of the reasons why I set up a solo 401k, is so I can still do my backdoor Roth IRA each year.
Before you tell us about why you fancy, I just want to say that that is such a great question. And that is such a great consideration, because when we were newbies, my husband established his private practice. That is exactly what was recommended by an accountant, to open up a SEP IRA instead. And that's what we did, because I actually don't know exactly what his reasoning was, but SEP IRAs, sometimes you can put a little bit more profit in. And so he maybe thought that it would reduce our taxable income. And that limited us for years putting money into my husband's backdoor Roth IRA. One is because of inertia. We didn't just roll it into a solo 401k. It was an extra step that we had to do. It pigeonholed us from really taking action and doing the backdoor Roth every single year. So I think that that is a fantastic point. And it also raises another thing that I say probably way too often on this podcast. So thank you for listening to, to me preach. But is why is so important that we have this podcast? Why is so important that we learn some of the nuances of our finances? Because the recommendations from accountants and other financial professionals may be cookie cutter. It may not apply to your specific situation. So you want to make sure that you increase your knowledge, that you actually practice, do some of this stuff by yourself, and that you have the confidence to go back and forth with these other financial professionals to ask the questions and explain your situation so that you can make the right money decisions for you. Now, I think that you could tell us how you are fancy and how we can be fancy like you, Lisha.
Yeah. One of the ways that I'm quote unquote fancy, and you may want to consider as you're thinking about setting up a solo 401k for your side gig income, right? So you can stuff more money in retirement accounts, is to set up your solo 401k to be able to do something called the Mega Backdoor Roth. What the heck is that? So the Mega Backdoor Roth is basically setting up your solo 401k or setting up any sort of retirement account to be able to make Mega Backdoor Roth contributions. What are those? So in a traditional solo 401k, in a traditional retirement account that you may have access to, we talked about employee contributions and employer contributions. So the employee contribution, $23,500. The employer contribution, if you have a solo 401k, is 20% of profit. Just employed at a W-2 job. Your employer contribution is your match. The max amount that you can have into these accounts, I think for this year, Brittne, it's like $70,000 total in the account. So that includes your employee contribution of $23,500 and your employer contribution, which for a lot of people is their match at their job. Or if you have side gig income, it's 20% of profit. And the next question I get all the time is, Lisha, how is anybody able to fill up this account? If you can have up to $70,000 in there and I'm putting the max of $23,500 as an employee contribution, I get a match at my job, but it's not $48,000 a year. Like, how is this possible? How can I put more money into this account? Or if I have a solo 401k, Lisha, 20% of, how am I ever going to fill this account? And one of the ways that you can fill the account, if you set it up properly, to be able to do a Mega Backdoor Roth. What is that? That is contributing after-tax money into the account and then doing a Roth conversion inside of the account. So let me use an example. You've already done your employee contribution at your job, and now you've got side gig income. And you're like, all right, Lisha, I'm going to set up my solo 401k. Let's say you set up your business, you make $30,000, as we mentioned before, you have $10,000 of expenses. And so you have $20,000 of profit. The normal thing would be you can make an employer contribution of 20% of that profit. 20% of the $20,000 would be $4,000 you can put into the account. But what you can also do is contribute, if you wanted, the remaining $16,000 of profit as an after tax contribution. So you would pay taxes on the $16,000 as you normally would, and then you convert it to a Roth. And so then now you've got $16,000 of Roth money into the solo 401k as well. And so when it's all said and done, you've contributed $20,000 into this account instead of the initial $4,000. So $4,000 of that $20,000 that you contributed is pre-tax. The remaining $16,000 is Roth money. And you're like, Lisha, why would I do that? That seems like a bunch of extra steps, super complicated. Remember, Roth money, you never pay taxes on again. Roth money grows tax-free, and you can take it out tax-free. And so now you're able to put more money into this tax protected account. Your money is able to grow and be invested over time. You don't have to pay taxes on the money when you take it out of the account in retirement. And so now we just went from maybe you have side income and you didn't even set up a solo 401k, so you weren't even contributing any extra money. The basic plan, setting up a regular solo 401k, would allow you, in our example, to put $4,000 as pre-tax money into this account. That's better than nothing. But if you set up the fancy plan, you can actually have $20,000 in that account, $4,000 as pre-tax and $16,000 as Roth money. So setting up this fancy plan allows you to stuff even more money into tax-protected retirement accounts.
Okay, I hear you. For those of you who have the side income that you don't need, it's just like icing on the cake, right? You have your bills paid, you're maxing out your retirement accounts. So you've done the 401k contribution, you've done your backdoor Roth contribution, and now you've opened up the solo 401k, you've contributed the 20% of profits, and you still have money that you could utilize and put into an account in a tax protected fashion. What I also like about this concept of using a mega backdoor Roth is not that you can just put money in a tax protected fashion, but it also helps you to diversify how your taxes will look not only today, but also in retirement. It's like a Roth conversion. It's another Roth conversion that you're doing, but you're just paying the taxes today. And when you pull them out in retirement, you won't pay the taxes on the portion of money that you do using the mega backdoor Roth, but you will pay taxes on the money that you put in using the traditional 401k and also the solo 401k. So this allows for tax diversification, which is great. And we know that the Roth IRA has tremendous benefits of being a legacy builder because you don't have to pull the money out and require minimum distributions. And so you can leave that as a nest egg for your family. Okay, Lisha, so I think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid now. You convinced me that this is something that we can do. One of the things that I'm concerned about, though, what are some of the drawbacks? What if someone wanted to do this? Who should not do this?
That's a good question. I don't think there's any harm in setting up a solo 401k to be able to have these features. You don't have to utilize them. For example, you can set up your solo 401k to be able to do all this stuff and then say, you know what, actually, I kind of want to keep all my profit, right? I don't want to put the money as an after tax contribution and convert it for, I don't want to do all that. I actually have uses for my money. But I find actually setting it up this way really allows you to be able to make that decision. Some of the drawbacks of doing so is that if you want to set up your solo 401k to be able to have these features, you cannot just call a regular brokerage firm and have them do this. You actually have to go through a third party and have them set up basically at Fidelity, it's called a non-prototype solo 401k, which is basically fancy words for saying she's got this customized plan. And so you have to go through a third party to set up a customized plan. And then once they set it up, you can house it at a brokerage firm like Fidelity or Vanguard or whatever. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to go through a different company to set it up and make sure it has all the features and the bells and whistles, and then you can house it at Fidelity. And because you have to go through a third party, that's another company you have to call, and there's a fee associated associated with that. When you are setting it up for the first time, I want to say it costs around $400 or $500 the first time for them to set it up. And then there's like $100 per year maintenance fee, for instance. So for me, the money is well worth it, right? Having somebody set this up for me correctly and then paying $100 a year to maintain it is like a low fee, but it is an extra step. Another drawback is that a lot of your specialists at these brokerage firms are not as familiar with this. When I was setting mine up, I actually had to go into the branch at Fidelity and help the person who was quote unquote the retirement specialist understand how this worked. He didn't believe me. So then he had to call his boss. And then his boss was like, oh, yeah, 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 that's possible.
I
There was some
love it.
questions there about like, what is she trying to do? And how many different accounts? Technically, when you're setting this up, you need 3 solo 401ks. You need a pre-tax account, an after-tax account, and Roth account. So they were very confused about what is happening and how it rolls. With a solo 401k, there's an additional IRS accounting step. Once you have over, I think it is $250,000 in the account, you have to fill out an extra IRS form each year when you file your taxes. Thankfully, the company that helped me set mine up, they basically manage a lot of this. They'll send me emails. Hey, Lisha, how much money do you have in this account? Or do you have at least 250,000 in this account? Let us know because we'll file this form for you. Each year on tax year, they say, hey, did you do the Mega Backdoor Roth each year? If so, let us know so we can file this form for you. And so I like it because they manage all of that. The only thing I need to do is pay attention to my email, which let's just face it, some points in life, that's a little bit harder than others. They make it easy for me. But if we are asking me about drawbacks, I would say one is you have to go through a third party company. Two, there's an extra fee associated with it. And three, you have to deal with a brokerage that may not be as familiar with the process and just being a little bit patient as you are setting it up. One of the benefits and another potential drawback is because it's a customized plan, I can invest in whatever I want. And I like that flexibility. When you are investing money only through your jobs work retirement account, you can only invest in the options that they allow you to choose from. But because this is a plan that I'm setting up myself, I can invest in whatever I want. And so I like that feature. Another part is because I have a customized plan, I can actually make even more types of investments. If I wanted to invest in private real estate, I could do that. If I wanted to invest in cryptocurrency, I could do that. Again, because I have a customized plan. For a lot of people, they like that flexibility of saying, you know what, I can invest in index funds, ETFs, those sorts of things, but I can also invest in real estate deals, oil and gas potentially, and cryptocurrency, again, because I have this customized plan. One of the drawbacks of doing so is whenever I try to invest money in my solo 401k, because it's a customized plan, oftentimes when I'm putting money into the account, I actually have to call Fidelity to do so. It's not something that I can just do online. I think they do that to prevent fraud, but that's sort of inconvenient for me sometimes when I'm trying to put money into the solo 401k. I have to technically call the brokerage firm and say, hey, I want to transfer money from this account to that account. It's very easy. At this point, I've gotten really skilled. It just takes me a couple of minutes, but technically I do have to call whenever I want to make that contribution.
Okay, that was extremely helpful. Whenever we're considering something, we want to not only be attracted by the benefits, but we also want to fully understand the depth of the decision that we're making and what are some of the drawbacks. So, what I'm hearing from you, it's a bit more complicated to make it fancy that you have to use this third party. It also adds additional effort because not only are you corresponding with them, but then you have the broker that's housing the account Fidelity. And because of the sophistication of the account, that you can't use typical ways to fund it every time you want to put money into the account. It could be a little bit more complicated or requires an extra step when you're thinking about your taxes because they have to make sure that they're filing the appropriate forms and that the accounting is appropriate. Now, one of the things that you mentioned at the top of the episode was your friend was like, nah, Lisha, I'm not trying to be fancy right now. Like, I'm just trying to be average. I could be fancy later. So if someone is like, okay, I get it. Lisha, this sounds fantastic, but I don't know if I'm there yet. All I really want to do is to put money into the solo 401k because there are a couple other things that I want to do with my cash flow instead of putting it into this Mega Backdoor Roth. They just want to do the straightforward approach. Is there an option once they have the account established to either modify the account or do they have to open up a new solo 401k that has all of the features of the Mega Backdoor Roth?
That's a great question. So if you're just setting up a basic plan, you can call a brokerage firm, call Fidelity, say the words, I want to open a solo 401k. They'll ask you if you want it to be pre-tax or Roth. You might say pre-tax if you're trying to save money on your taxes this year, and they'll open it up for you. It's very simple. It's very easy. And I want to say it's free or very, very low cost to even open the account. And so for my friend who said, I just want the basic plan, that's what I told her to do. Girl, I can help you with a lot of it, but literally just, can you do me a favor and at least have the account open? So call Fidelity, say the words, I want to open a pre-tax solo 401k and have them open the account for you. And we'll work out the kinks and all that stuff later. If you have a basic plan and then later you decide, hey, I want the fancy plan, because the fancy plan is a customized plan that is a non-prototype solo 401k, you do have to set up a new customized plan. Now, setting that up is pretty easy. You call one of these third-party firms and they'll help you set it up. And then you can stop contributing to the old one and start contributing to the newer one. Even though you have to set up a new plan, it really isn't all that complicated. You're just calling the third party. Oftentimes they'll send you the forms, tell you which questions you need to answer, and they'll help set all that stuff up for you. Examples of third parties, I think there are a bunch that actually do this, but I kind of kept it simple and went to literally mysolo401k.com. And I thought they were very helpful. They send very informative emails. They have free webinars to help teach you about the account and all that stuff. That's who I went through. But technically speaking, if you want to set up a basic plan, not a problem. Call a brokerage firm, let them know you want to open it. If you want a fancy plan, go through one of these third parties and let them know that you want to set that up.
Well, this sounds great. And if any of our listeners have enough money to fill up this account to the $70,000, just one word of caution is you want to make sure that you're doing this after tax contribution and rollover or conversion into a Mega Backdoor Roth after your employer has given you your match, because you don't want to compete with your employer match. Remember, this account does not have unlimited capacity. It only has a capacity of 70K. So you want to put in your employee contribution. You want your employer, if you get a match, to put in their contribution, and then you just fill in the gaps. After you make your solo 401k contribution of profit sharing, then you just fill in the gaps. So you want to make sure you get the free money. We all about getting all of the free money that we can. And then another word of caution is there something else that you want to do with that money? And do you have the cash flow? Because we don't want you to run into any issues by putting all this money into a retirement account and you're creating cash flow issues. So you want to make sure you have a good handle over your budget and understanding. But if this is something that you're like, okay, I got all of those boxes checked, then this sounds like a fantastic opportunity. And honestly, Lisha, we have not done the Mega Backdoor Roth ourselves. We have a cash balance plan that we could talk about in a whole nother episode that allows us to put more money into accounts for retirement in a tax deferred manner. But I think this is a great option for people. And thank you so much for introducing this to everybody and educating us.
Yeah. So one thing is, like, depending on the kind of retirement account you have at your job, you may actually have two separate 70K limits for the retirement accounts, right? So if your main retirement account at your job is a 403B, you only get one limit. But if your main account at your job is a 401k, you actually get two separate limits. And we'll talk about some of the nuances of this in a future episode where we talk about what do you do if you have multiple 401ks or a 403B and a solo 401k or a 403B and a 401k and all of these different accounts. What do we do for our overachievers who have multiple jobs? So we'll talk about how to navigate that and how much money you can stuff in each account. But I agree with you, just making sure that you understand some of those rules, talking with your accountant if you're a little confused. Our main goal today was to just open up the idea of saying, hey, for a lot of people who have side gig income, one of the cool things that you can do is open a solo 401k, whether you do the basic plan or fancy plan, which will allow you to stuff even more money into tax protected retirement accounts. And again, the benefit of doing so is being able to put more money into an account that can grow over time and help you build wealth faster and also reduce your taxes. And so if you are interested in doing that, considering a solo 401k is a good option.
All right. So now let's talk about some fun money.
Yeah. Brittne, what are you doing?
I don't think my fun money is as fun as your fun money, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So I have on a new sweatsuit and it is nice and cozy. I love my sweatpants. I know that I wear the same sweatpants over and over and over again because there's a particular one that I like with the pockets in the back, etc. They're nice and cozy. They fit me well. So now I have invested in a few new sweatsuits and I've gotten a lot of compliments. Even today, Kate is like, oh, mommy, I want to wear an outfit like yours because I'm wearing blue. So that's what I'm doing with my money. I'm just buying cozy, comfortable clothes that still look stylish. So when I'm dropping my kids off in the morning, I don't look like who did it and what for.
I love that. I'm all for the comfy loungewear. And I know where you are in Boston, you probably need your loungewear to be sweatsuits. Where are you getting your comfy sweatsuits?
So, as you all know, I am a frugal franny, and I'm also just in the wake of some of the landscape of companies voicing where their values lie. I'm not shopping at many places. So now I have been going to TJ Maxx, and I think that their values align with my values right now, unless something changes. And they've been very affordable. This one that I have on it was about $30, and the other one maybe around $40. When I buy clothes, I keep my clothes nice and clean. If I get a stain, I like take that stain out right then and there. So I'm hoping that it will last me at least 4 or 5 years. We will see how much value I get out of these sweatsuits.
I love that. I love that for you. Maybe I'll check out TJ Maxx. I don't usually shop there, but if you're getting affordable, stylish sweatsuits from there, maybe it is something that I should check out. In terms of my fun money, my family is planning a vacation. I think I mentioned this before that my family does vacations together. This year, we've planned, or I should say, one of my cousins has planned a cousin's cruise. A cousin's cruise.
Oh, I love this concept.
Yes. So I have a gazillion family members. I think I might have mentioned this. My
Yes.
mother has 13 siblings. My dad has 8. Those siblings have kids and those kids have kids. And now those kids are having kids. So it's just a gazillion family members. Even if we just take my dad's side of the family, there's just so many cousins, right? So the kids of the original siblings. And then those kids are starting to have kids. And we were like, hey, there's so many of us cousins. Why don't we do a cousin's vacation? And my cousin, who sort of came up with the idea, she loves cruises. She loves cruises because she feels like she doesn't have to plan a bunch of stuff. She knows where she's going to sleep. She knows that there's food available. And if she wants to spend extra money, she can. So she's a huge fan of cruises. And she said, hey, our last family cruise with everybody was to Alaska. We had an incredible experience. But she was like, let's go even fancier. Let's do a cruise in Europe. She's always wanted to go to Greece. And so that is the
Mm.
plan, to do a cousin's cruise to Greece. The one she picked out is about, I think it's like 8 days or 8 nights or something like that. And it goes to Greece and Turkey. So it's Santorini and Mykonos, starts in Athens. And then I think we go to Istanbul, Turkey as a part of that cruise. That is her idea. Now, granted, I have not paid towards this cruise. And the cruise is supposed to be in the fall, I think in September. So I'm like, all right, am I going to go on this cruise? And like, how much is it? I remember you talking about your cruise and getting a suite. And so I am considering that because maybe I want to be fancy like you. But yeah, that is what I am contemplating doing with my money, is paying for this cousin's cruise to Greece.
You should definitely do it. I mentioned that the greatest value that I saw or felt from the cruise was just being with my family in one place, because I live in Boston, my family's in Michigan, Chicago, Atlanta, not close by. And to spend 7 days where I could just walk down the hallway and knock on the door and show up, it was fantastic. So I love this idea. I actually am thinking about stealing it. So kudos to your cousin, because my family, we typically get together over the holidays, but I think that this will be a great way for us to spend more time together. So I really, really hope, regardless of how much it costs, that you pay for it.
Spoken like the person who doesn't have to pay for it. But I hear you. I hear you. Alrighty. Hopefully you learned some stuff this episode, and we can't wait to come back to you next week. Bye-bye.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Minds Blueprint.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Minds Blueprint is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training, so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Minds Blueprint now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittne Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Prati Botto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.